You will fail as a Scrum Master. Yeah, you heard me right. There's a great chance that you'll fail as a Scrum Master. A few weeks ago, I talked about the common mistakes a Scrum Master should avoid. A few weeks later, I talked about the common anti-patterns that a Scrum Master typically falls for. But you still wanted more. I read your comments. You still want more. I said today I'm going to talk about the top 3 reasons why you'll fail as a Scrum Master. I want to make this video, keep this video short and concise. So let's jump in. Reason number 1, you have a metrics fetish. Having a Scrum Master regularly check the burn up, the burn down, the lead time, velocity, cycle time, all these metrics. That's a pretty good Scrum Master. Having another Scrum Master teaching the team why all these metrics are useful, why the team should be using these metrics, coaching the team on how to use these metrics to improve, to take informed decisions. Even better, but we all know a Scrum Master that takes it way too far. A Scrum Master that keeps track of individual performance metrics, story points, hours worked by each developer per sprint, lines of code written by each developer per sprint. Looks insane, but I know Scrum Masters who keep track of these metrics, individual, per person, per sprint, micro-managing people, requesting that people give status of tasks or what they do each and every single minute in the daily stand-up, during the day, multiple times per day. And even Scrum Masters taking all these metrics, all this data, and reporting them, sending these data to managers. All these go completely against one of the core fundamental principles of agile, self-managed, self-organized teams. Remember, the team in agile, the team decides what to build, how to build it, and who builds it. Not the developers, not the Scrum Master, not the product owner, but the team. It's a team effort to decide on all these things. No one should be giving status reports to the Scrum Master, to the product owner. The team should be self-managed, self-organized. We shouldn't be managing people. We should be managing work, not people. No one should be micromanaging developers. The Scrum Master doesn't have any authority on the team. No authority on the team. The Scrum Master is a coach, a servant leader. The Scrum Master shouldn't be forcing team members, developers to do stuff. If you feel that you have a metrics fetish, that's totally fine. I suggest reading the Scrum Guide, the latest version, the 2020 version of the Scrum Guide, and refreshing your understanding of the role of a Scrum Master. You can also watch my other videos. So reason number 2 why you'll fail as a Scrum Master, you're pushing Agile and Scrum way too much. It would make sense to preach Agile, the Scrum framework, to the team and use it by the book. But what if the team or the organization don't understand why we are using Scrum, why we are using Agile? Do you really think that people like joining a daily Scrum meeting every single day in the morning for 15 minutes, advertised as 15 minutes, but usually takes 30 minutes? Believe me, no one wants to do that. But what if the Scrum Master coaches the team to understand why there's a daily Scrum? What's the use of a daily Scrum? But the daily Scrum is for the development team. The daily Scrum is not for the Scrum Master, not for a product owner, not a status meeting. The Scrum Master can join to coach the team, to facilitate the session. The product owner can join to answer questions, to help the team understand the requirements. But these 2 people are not required in the meeting. The only people required in the meeting are the development team. That's it. Their session. They decide together. They craft a plan together to get closer to the sprint goal. That's it. It's not a status meeting. Do you see the difference here? It's guaranteed that if you explain it that way to the development team and they understand it, obviously they will want to go. They will be excited every single morning to go to their session. And the same thing applies for other Scrum events, the sprint retrospective. No one wants to go to that, but if you explain to the development team, to the team, that they will decide what to do, how to do it, and who does it in terms of improvement items. And if these improvement items are valued by the product owner, by the sponsors, by stakeholders, and each of these improvement items are taken up in future sprints, we are taking action on these improvement items. What the team values are being done. Obviously, they will be excited to go to every single sprint retrospective because what they are wishing, what they want to improve on, is being valued by everyone. The same thing applies to the sprint planning session. I've often assisted to sprint planning sessions being completely dominated by either the Scrum Master or the product owner, or even both. Dominated, the Scrum Master, the product owner, deciding how to build something and by when to build it. Setting deadlines to the development team, estimating work for the development team. The Scrum Master should know and understand that the sprint planning session is for the development team. The development team is working on a sprint backlog, committing on a list of things to do in the sprint, estimating these things and committing on a list of things to do in order to produce an increment of a product. The development team decides how to build something and who builds it and by when. Not the product owner, not the Scrum Master. They shouldn't be estimating work for the development team. You see that reframing here? Completely different sprint planning session. The team understands. They are excited to go to a sprint planning session because they know that they have control on the sprint planning session. If a Scrum Master doesn't understand that, dominates the session, or lets a product owner dominate the session, obviously developers won't want to attend the session and the Scrum Master will fail. Reason number 3, you do stuff. The most popular video on my channel talks about the typical day of a Scrum Master, and it's popular for a reason. This role is confusing. Even Scrum Masters, some Scrum Masters don't understand the role. Now imagine people who don't know what Agile is, who don't know what Scrum is. Just imagine these people trying to understand the Scrum Master role. Already confusing for people doing that role. That's why this video is so popular. No one understands what the Scrum Master does. And you know why? Because the Scrum Master does nothing. There's no output of the work of a Scrum Master, like visible output of a work. The product owner can produce user stories. The developers write code. You can see the code. You can see visible the user stories. But what about the Scrum Master? No visible output. And because of this, some Scrum Masters fall into the trap of starting to do stuff, starting to do things that they shouldn't be doing. Things like assigning tasks to developers. Instead of having a pull system, when someone is free, a developer is free, just pulls something and starts working on something. Writing user stories, planning the sprint ahead, the backlog of the sprint ahead, instead of a product owner doing it. Working on technical specifications, estimating work instead of letting the development team, the technical people, do that. Working, being a Jira admin, managing all the tasks on the Kanban board instead of team members actually moving the task themselves throughout the board, deciding what is and what is not an impediment instead of letting the self-organized team decide that. Working on resolving these impediments. All these impediments, the Scrum Master feels responsible, accountable to work on all these impediments, resolving these impediments instead of letting the self-organized team do it. The main issue here is that the Scrum Master usually doesn't even understand that there's a problem. The Scrum Master thinks that they are helping the team, but they are not. They are preventing the team from being self-organized, from being self-managed, one of the core principles of Agile. Obviously, in some organizations, there will be always managers, upper management, maybe forcing Scrum Masters to do all these things. Maybe the Scrum Master is not strong enough to say, no, that's not my role. But in other cases, and I would say even in most cases, it's the Scrum Master's own fault. The Scrum Master, just because there's no visible outputs, feels bad and starts doing stuff that they shouldn't be doing, instead of actually coaching the team, teaching the team, being a servant leader, being a manager of all the 8 stances of a Scrum Master. They are not doing that. Instead, they are working on Jira. They are working on user stories. Maybe sometimes they don't even know what a Scrum Master does, what the 8 stances should be, how to help the team, how to teach the team, how to coach the team. That's why they work on these manual things that have output, just to hide the fact that they don't know how to do the other stuff. If you want more tips, insights on Agile, Scrum, personal growth, click on the video that stands out the most on the screen right now, and I'll see you in a few seconds.